a person and say, pardon me, the chances are equal and maybe even stronger that they'll say, oh, my fault. So getting back to the article of it being a burden, I would say it's also an opportunity. It depends upon how you look at it. And the way one looks at civility, I think, has an awful lot to do with the success of practicing it.
It's remarkable, because what Glenn has done, he has taken an existential bent, I think, on the idea of civility. For him, we have to bear these billions of human beings who are mysterious because we're bound to bear them. They are burdens that we have to carry.
Well, or responsibility. We do have, to be social, to be civilized, we have to realize there are rules to follow and for the greater good. And for the social welfare, and for the public health, and for the public benefit. So the rules are there not to oppress, and that's that tension, that's that paradox, because we want our privacy. We don't want people in our face, especially when you're walking down a sidewalk and you're sharing that sidewalk with maybe not billions, but a whole lot of strangers most of the time. And you've got a place to go to, and then there's somebody just dawdling in front of you on the cell phone, totally oblivious, thinking they're the only one in the universe. That's when you see that lesson of civility. That's the practice that your author there would say, no, that's not right. There are billions. There are people around. You cannot act that way.
Precisely.
Yeah.
May I share with you something quite fresh, something that happened to me about 2 days ago. I shared this with my students yesterday while I'm teaching a course on Eastern philosophy. Perhaps I mentioned this to you in our offices. I'm a devoted swimmer. I swim at least 3 times a week. So 2 days ago, it was very early in the morning, I did try to swim. And because of the heat, I believe, for the first time, the swimming pool, which is normally quite solitary, underused, uncrowded, and that's not why I enjoy it, but it so happens that it's an underused pool. But this time it was full of people.
Oh, and the lanes, the swim lanes. Oh, yes.
The swim lanes. So I did come to swim, and then there were about 8 people in 4 lanes. 6 of them were women. May I say, white women. And here I stood, attempting to swim. I did try, but the vibrations were not right. I felt unwelcome. But I also wanted to swim. So I didn't know what to do. I stood there for about 10 minutes, hoping that at least one person would invite me to come in. None of them did. Finally, an older gentleman with whom I have bonded, a white male, who witnessed the scene, I think empathized with my condition. And he shouted at me, said, "Come on in, come to my lane." So I did go into his lane. Then there was a young female on the lane right next to it, which is the lane that I wanted to enter, because it's the lane that could have contained my body. I'm tall, and so on. Whereas the lane that I was forced to take was not the appropriate one for me. So I went in reluctantly. I did swim. Then, before the female, who should have invited me, who should have let me to swim and left, she said something like, "It would have been nice if you had come in to swim. This is after the fact." And then she walked out. So, in what way is civility in this instance either being used or abused, do you think? Give it your penetrating sociological attention.
Well, There were a lot of things that were going on there, don't you say? Definitely there was the demonstration of rudeness. But before we say that, I just want to emphasize that for people who are still struggling with that definition of what is civility, and interactions and social interactions in the city, they'll be verbal and they'll be nonverbal. So very often it's not, oh, what they said was rude, but very often it is maybe just not acknowledging the presence of someone.
For 10 minutes,
so that is definitely a violation of a civility rule. One has to practice an awareness, an artful awareness of the environment around oneself and one's impact on other people's well-being, whether or not you say a word to them, even if you're not right in front of them. But if you're glancing, if you're noticing that somebody is waiting for your spot to do, you have a choice. You still have a number of civil choices. You could just get up and leave the pool and say, all right, I've had my laps. I might not have done my quarter mile, but I see someone's waiting. Oh, it's all right, I'll let him in. Or else do what this other gentleman does do. This kind of feeble little, well, I kind of sort of was perhaps a bit of a meek acknowledgement on the part of this woman that she wasn't being too civil, and let's say that the positive side of me would say it was a bit of an apology, maybe not the most convincing, but that was the best she could do. Civility is something, it's an art form. It takes practice. It takes awareness, so that some of us definitely are going to be better at it than not, because we're practicing it, we're thinking about it. It's something that, I don't know, I guess we could get into a debate. Does it come instinctively? I would say probably not. It's art. It's an art.
I see.
There's a reason for it. It's a necessity. But how one does it, and yeah, it has a lot to do with the way one feels about oneself as well. And so there are a number of people who have addressed this. And can I bring in another writer?
Please do.
This is, as I said earlier, in my City Life class, we build up to this with the students. They go outside, they see interactions, they report about things that they've been riding on the T, and you know, when it's busy and crowded and people are gabbing and noisy, and or they're just not respecting another person's space. So the students write their memos of what they've observed, and the civility piece is always there. So they know that. They've got some real context now. They're going beyond theory. And so that's when we bring out this book.
I see.
And it's a wonderful book by P.M. Forney, and he's co-founder of the Johns Hopkins Civility Project. He's on faculty at Johns Hopkins University. He is he teaches literature, I think Italian literature, and now he's teaching courses on civility. And he's written this book, and it's called Choosing Civility, the 25 Rules of Considerate Conduct.
I see.
And he's come up with some fairly basic ones, and as a matter of fact, some actually came into play from that anecdote that you brought up. And one that I know of is definitely be inclusive. When you notice that there is somebody nearby and around, and you're in a group, and they are isolated from it, welcome them in, even if you maybe are not the best of friends, but that person is there. Be inclusive. So there you saw a practice of good civil practice. Another rule he has is, well, certainly pay attention. So that's the first civility rule, that the students learn and really hone that skill.